Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all fantastic. I've got a quad Cortex on the bench today. Big thank you to my buddy Kevin for lending me his quad Cortex. He hadn't even taken it out of the box and he offered to send it over to me so I can make some videos with it. So get in the comments and thank Kevin and send him some love, because this has been a very hotly requested piece of gear for me to feature on the channel. It has been one of the most hyped pieces of guitar gear that I can remember in recent memory. And I've got a lot of things that I think about that, and I don't really want to talk about them right now. I can maybe talk about them another time. Let's actually see what this thing is like to use, and I want to start by dialing in a basic clean and a dirty preset. Then we'll take a look at the capture function, and I'll kind of wrap up with some of my thoughts based on my first couple of days with this particular unit. So first things, I have to say, it feels really, really premium. Like the entire chassis and the way everything's laid out, nice kind of minimalist sort of aesthetic going on there. Big touch screen. I think the touch screen is one thing that a lot of people have been attracted to. But at the end of the day, if something doesn't sound amazing, having fancy UI doesn't really matter. We all know that. What I have found is that it's pretty easy to get going with this unit without even reading the manual. Things are kind of where you would expect them to be. So kudos to Neural DSP for really putting a bunch of work into the UI on this. And I'll give you an example of that, because we can just start by putting an amp block here. You press there, you get a menu. I'll start with an amp. Let's maybe go not crazy high gain right now. I think there's a few nice kind of Marshall models up here, like the Brit JTM45, or it's TM45 Bright. I love that amp in the real world. And let's pop a cabinet after this as well, maybe for something with greenbacks. You can load your own IRs in here. It is a bit of a ball ache at the moment to do that. Like, you got to get on your computer, upload it to your Neural DSP account, and then download it from here. So I'll just roll with the factory cabs. And what do we have here? Let's go with Bogner Uber T75s. I'm gonna do T75s because T75s are a really underrated speaker in the real world. Now, first cool thing, rather than scroll through a list of IRs, you get something that kind of looks like a speaker with a microphone. I'm just gonna maybe disable this mic here. How many times? Okay, we can do that. And you can just kind of move the mic and the distance like that with your hands. So I would put a 57 somewhere around here on a real cabinet. Let's just have a listen to what that sounds like. Okay, let's blend in some 160 with this one, a nice ribbon. One thing that I wish was in here with all of these cabs is a Royal 121. I don't think there's a 121, and that feels like, no, there is. I am wrong, there's a ribbon 121. Yes, I didn't see this when I was checking this out the first time, so that makes me happy. I would normally stick a Roya right there, and let's just bring the level down on it just to blend in some extra bottom end. Okay, that's basically the classic studio mic combo right there. What I want to do though is actually get in and dial in the amp, and then we'll filter out that cab a little bit. So it sounds really boomy at the moment. Let's do that. Let's push the mids, a little less gain because I love these as clean amps, and let's just leave the rest there for now. Alternatively, I can use the knobs in the foot switches to do that as well. It's not a bad starting point right there. I do want some post EQ on all of that, so you can go to the EQ section right here. You can have a graphic, you can have a low and a high cut, and 3 or 8 band parametrics. Let's just start. I'm gonna bring out a bunch of low end there and a bunch of high end just to kind of smooth this out. Let's take a listen to that. volume control roll-off feels very drastic. I think you can play around with the input impedance on this. Yeah, right here. So maybe I'll play around with that later. We won't get too kind of nerdy with this, but that is pretty drastic on this particular amp. So, all right, I've got a clean sound set up. Let's add some reverb. Where is R for reverb? Probably down the bottom. Nope, that's probably right here, reverb. Now, one thing that is notably missing at the moment is a plate reverb. I would love a plate with this, but let's just go for a hall reverb on this. Let's have a listen to their stock hall. I find with all of these reverbs that the effects mix is really high by default, so you kind of get that effect of like, whoa, this reverb's massive, and then when you want to go and actually use it, you turn it down a bunch anyway. Reminds me exactly of the Kemper. When I was checking out the Kemper, all the effects mixes are really high by default, which again has that kind of effect on you. So let's just bring the mix down. Okay, I like that there's a high and a low pass in the reverb block, so I can take a bunch of low end out of it if I want to, the old Abbey Road trick. Okay, that's sounding decent right now. I could add a delay to that. I love delay. We've got a couple of delay types in here. There's no dual delay in here yet, but there is a tape delay that you can set up to ping pong. So that's about as close as you can get at the moment. Let's put that ping pong on. Stock settings. That's a decent sounding tape delay there. What I can put in the input section is maybe let's add a, I'll add an overdrive, but I'll bypass it for now. I think there's a clon in here, the myth drive. Let's chuck that one on there just because clon. So we'll turn that one off at the moment and I'll put it down here and we'll put a compressor at the start. There's a couple of nice compressors in here. I like the Optocomp. Basically at the stock settings on this one. I'll go to position 4 on this guitar. So it's like instant 90s diary rock tone right there. I will say it straight up front, probably my favorite feature on this device is the way scenes are organized and the way effect settings work there. So let's just say we want to roll with this and I'll press this button here so I can go to scene mode. There's 8 scenes, or if you're a Helix user, these would be snapshots. So what I can do is I can go through, let's say on scene A or scene 1, let's bypass the delay. So I'll leave that there. And then on scene 2, I'll have the delay on, the compressor off, and the drive on. Let me just kind of turn the drive down and the level up a little bit. Okay, let's say though on this particular scene, I want less delay mix. I can just come in here and I can turn the mix down and then I can go to a different scene. Let's say the third scene over here, and I can set a different mix and a different feedback for my delay. On the fourth scene, same kind of thing. If I go back to my scene mode, you can check this out now, the delays will change smoothly in value. And that works across all the blocks there. So you can do a similar thing in, say, the Fractal ecosystem using scene controllers. Helix has snapshots on there, but I just find that this is a really nicely thought out and implemented feature on here if you're gonna just use one preset live and maybe use multiple amps or multiple captures and go from there. So the kind of edge breakup clean stuff in there I think sounds pretty good. Let's do this. Let's hear one of my IRs that I managed to upload in here. So you can come in here, let's just turn that off. I'm gonna feel a whole lot more comfortable with the overall tone, I think. I'll use this LTTV mix. We'll just do that. So this is using one of my own IRs. Alrighty, I probably would just go to the amp model and turn the bass up a little bit as a baseline just to match my IR. Alright, I'm happy with that as a clean tone. So what I'm interested in now is you can add up to 4 amps in this particular preset. So let's see how much we can cram in here, and I'm gonna add another amp block down here. Let's do that. And I'm gonna try something high gain because I love high gain. And it's interesting that you can see here that you can't use certain amp types in conjunction with one another, which kind of feels weird. I don't feel like I have that much going on in this particular preset. Where is the Soldano? At least I can have the Solo 100 lead in here. So I can do that in there. What I'm gonna do is, I'm actually just gonna, I don't know if this is best practice or anything, or if you should run these in parallel. I'll pop that up there, which sounds like crazy amounts of gain, and I'll bypass the JTM 45 on this scene. I'm gonna go back later and reorganize my scenes. So I'll turn the compressor off for now, and I'll maybe just, I'll leave this reverb on. It's quite a nice reverb. Actually, let's go to a different reverb type in there. We'll just use kind of basic room reverb. I'll bring the time down on it. Well, 1 second's not too bad. I will bring the mix down from ridiculous to reasonable. And let's just hear this Soldano at stock settings. Everything else the same. All right, that doesn't sound too bad at the moment. I haven't tweaked it a whole bunch, obviously. I'll just kind of note that I liked the feel on the JTM 45. I don't love the feel here. It kind of feels a little bit like compressed under your fingers. And the other thing as well is like the cleanup. Kind of has that like mid-rangey thing that something like the Kemper has as well. So yeah, that's okay. I could try a bunch of different amp models, but I'm gonna just work with this one and see how much I can massage it. It's okay. It's totally okay. It's not the best Soldano model that I've ever heard. I've actually tried the Neural Soldano plugin, and I probably like that a little bit more. One thing I will say, having tried a bunch of the other high gain amps as well, is this is probably my favorite high gain amp in there, but I don't think any of them sound as good as the Neural plugin straight out of the box, even with the same IR, which is kind of interesting. And I know Neural DSP had this long list of amp models that they were going to launch with, and we don't have a lot of those amp models, and you can see you can't use certain amp models together either. So you know, this gets into one of those things that I said I wasn't going to talk about, but, you know, it's great to say that you can do all this kind of stuff, but sometimes just let the actual product speak for itself and, you know, say, hey, you can do this stuff, but keep in mind there are limitations to what can be done on this, and that's totally fine. Everything has limitations as long as it sounds decent enough. So that's the Soldano model. Like I said, let's just take a look at what some of the other amps are in here. We've got 2203. We've got a JCM 900, which is sorely underrepresented in a lot of amp models, and then the kind of typical Plexi stuff. I mean, have a listen to the Plexi now if we do this and we start with kind of typical Plexi settings. Turn the mids up, turn the treble up. We get this. I don't know, that doesn't feel amazing to me. It feels totally okay. It's almost like it's lacking part of the kind of like speaker impedance modeling or something like that going on. Again, I'll try not to bring up the Axe effects too much, but for the price differential in American dollars, what you can do with the Axe FX3 in terms of power is pretty amazingly ridiculous. I think that's one thing a lot of people have wondered is how does this compare to the Axe 3? And just in terms of raw power, they don't really compare. The Axe FX3 is like almost stupidly overspec'd with how much stuff you can put in it. And you all know that I love the amp modeling in there. I'm the #1 fractal fanboy in the world. Feel free to roast me about that in the comments. But yeah, that's just one thing that I found with this. There's also a bunch of factory captures. You know, if we don't want to have an amp model, we can use a different device. And again, I just complained about a bunch of stuff. It's so gloriously easy to navigate on this thing. The UI is really, really wonderful. I will not complain if every device in 10 years has a UI like this. Okay, there's 2 banks of factory captures, one for guitar stuff, one for bass stuff. It's kind of nice that they've considered the bass players, but you can see you can just go through banks of 8 over here. And there's some interesting stuff in here, like I'm guessing this is the CAE preamp. Probably my favorite high gain one in here is this Korn Vixen #1. But again, it does sound a little bit samey with the high gain stuff, which I wasn't really expecting because, like I said, the Neural DSP plugins are pretty awesome. Let's try something that's not crazy high gain, maybe something a little more, let's try this, a matchless. What does a matchless capture sound like? Okay, that got the end chopped off of it because one of my cameras just died, but we will soldier on. Let's just hear a couple of different effects and then we will move on to the whole capture section in there. What I'm gonna do is actually just ditch this compressor in this preset. So to do that, I can grab it here and I can go remove. It feels like using a smartphone basically, which we are probably all experienced with. Several of us are probably watching this video on our smartphone and possibly some kind of compromising position, but let's just ditch this amp as well. So I've got the capture of the matchless, I've got my user cab, got a little bit of filtering. Let's just hear some modulation effects with this. Let's start with, there's a dual chorus. I like chorus, let's check that out. Kind of cool that you can have this as a chorus or a vibrato. Another type of thing we could have is, let's hear the rotary. I'm curious to hear what sort of rotary thing they've got going in, what sort of controls. So, oh, you can set it from fast to slow. That's a nice little thing there. Let's check this out. pretty good sounding rotary. I have to say that right there. Let's try what else do we have? We've got trem, we've got vintage chorus, we've got a phaser. Let's try the flanger out. I'm gonna kind of race through this section. That's a good sounding flanger if you like the kind of 70s rush thing right there. I wouldn't add too much to that. Let's try a different device now. I want to hear their pitch detune. Do they have a pitch detune? We have pitch shifter, polyoctaver, and wham. Stay with this pitch shifter and see if I can tune my guitar down a semitone easily, because people really like this. There is a little bit of weird artifacting in there. I don't know if that's meant to be a polyphonic pitch shifter. How does it just work in mono? That's totally fine in mono right there. A lot of people I've seen rave about this, but that's fine. That's totally cool. Let's try a different type of effect. I don't think I'll get to all the drives in this video. If you want to see a really comprehensive breakdown of this, let me know in the comments, of course. And what haven't I tried? I think we've kind of tried most of the main types in there. Is there an auto wah? That would be cool. How do I auto wah stuff? Can I set up an auto wah? Maybe filter, let's go for that. Envelope filter, perfect. Let's do that one. That sounds like you could dial that in pretty neatly. I don't mind that at all. You can set the bass frequency. Maybe let's turn that up a bit. All right, that's pretty fun right there. So there is a really, really brief tour through some effects types. I think the modulation sounds really, really good. The delays and reverbs that are in there are pretty decent as well. Maybe let's just turn this off and try a big ambient reverb before we move on to the capture section. Modulated reverb, I like the sound of that. What do we got? Let's turn the decay on this right up. Big pre-delay, and this will be my segue to the capture section. How about that? Mod depth, mod speed. I'll go for a slightly lower speed. I generally like that with modulated reverbs, and let's turn that one up. And yeah, that's how you would build a preset. That's what some of the amp models sound like, and how the captures work and how you navigate on this device. Like I said, the UI is fantastic, and there's some really decent sounds in there at the moment. And we're gonna check out the capture in just a second. Okay, in this section, I'm going to create a neural capture of my Boogie Mark IV. I've got it hooked up to my Marshall 4x12 with 25 watt greenbacks. The mic I'm using is a Sennheiser MD421. Let's set it up. We can come to this little menu up here, new neural capture. There is a whole kind of signal flow diagram that takes you through step by step for doing all of this, which is lovely. The first couple of times you do it, it's more or less idiot proof, or you can choose to skip it. Then when you've done that, you will come up to the, I guess, pre-capture set of levels where you can set your input and output levels. So if you're trying to capture something where you don't have a whole lot of volume on it, you could do that very easily just by adjusting the input one level. And similarly, if you're trying to capture something like a really loud Marshall, then you could bring that down. But I've just set the level on the amp so it doesn't clip over here, which probably isn't ideal. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the sweet spot for the Boogie, but let's just roll with that for now. You've also got a couple of other options like the ground lift, which I found I needed to have on with this particular amp. I don't know if that's something with the power I've got here or if that's a common thing, but we will leave that on. And this is what it sounds like at the moment, just for reference. It's doing the Boogie thing. Let's start a capture. Alrighty, got a little bit of Ocarina of Time happening in there. In the meantime, what did that take? 4 or 5 minutes? Not too bad. Let's have a listen to the reference and then have a listen to this capture we've made. It's certainly very close. It feels a little bit different on those kind of, you know, muted chords down low. Just one more time, let's try the E string. Yeah, the low end's not quite exactly the same, but I guess it's close enough for rock and roll. Let's save that one right there. What can I call it? I can give it a name. So I could call it LT Mark IV. Let's see. I have big fat fingers, so I find myself kind of constantly fat fingering this touchscreen, but I managed to do that. And you can put tags and things like that in there for the cloud. So let's hit save on that. I think that's saved, and now I can exit it. And I guess I could just kind of pop this straight into a preset. I have to recable everything, so I'll do that, and then we can see how we could use this capture in a preset. All right, let's use that capture as a starting point, and I'll build a live preset, the sort of live preset I would use anyway around that particular capture. So we'll start with a gate. Let's just use the adaptive gate. I think that one sounds pretty good straight out of the box. Over here, I'm gonna put the amp that I just captured. So we go neural capture, up to my captures, and I'm gonna use this LT Mark IV. I also captured my Soldano Hot Rod 50. I'll probably capture all my amps and share them as well if people want to try them out. So let's just start with this Mark IV capture. Let's have a listen. And that one has all the gain right there. I'll definitely actually just add an EQ after that to take out some high end and some low end. If this was a live preset, I would go quite extreme with the low pass filter. Let's go to about 6,500 Hertz, and let's go to about 80-ish with the high pass. I always get them mixed up. Low cut is high pass. High pass is low cut. You got to remember that one, or you sound like an absolute moron when you talk to your sound guy. Love it. Lots and lots of gain going on there. Okay, what I want to do ideally is add a dual delay and some reverb, but there's not a dual delay in here just yet. So I have to create a dual delay. What I can do is take this output and send it to row 3 and row 4. Then I can use mono outputs here. So output 1, output 2. Let's put a kind of basic delay on there. We could use the simple delay, or we could use the mono tape delay. Let's use mono tape, and I'll do the same thing down here, mono tape. I think the default kind of subdivision is a quarter note, so I'm just going to change that one to a dotted eighth over here, and I'll just turn the dotted eighths feedback up a little bit so that everything kind of works out and syncs up. So should have a dual delay now. Got a dual delay now. I would ideally like to add a plate reverb in here, but again, there's not a plate reverb. I might just leave the reverb off for now. So that is, that's gonna do enough for a really basic live preset. I don't have an expression pedal connected, but I could set up a wah. So I got a dual delay on there. I'm pretty happy. I'm gonna go to scene mode right now. And on scene A, I want these delay blocks bypassed. So I'll bypass both of them. And let's have a listen to that. And maybe for scene A, I want less gain, so I can turn the gain on the capture down. This is actually kind of the part that feels a bit weird to me. To be fair, it feels weird on the Kemper as well when you really kind of deviate from the gain settings, maybe using different captures if you need a lead sound and a rhythm sound, but I'll just turn it down by 9 dB. Now, if you did that on the real amp, it would lose that kind of compressed thing that it's got. So that's just one thing that I've noticed. I mean, it works, it sounds fine, but I don't know if that's something they could improve on in the future, just the kind of authenticity of the controls. But again, I guess you kind of don't do this unless you're just going to take a bunch of captures, basically a bunch of snapshots of your amp. So a little less gain there. And then on scene B, do I press this? Have I done it right? I want the same amount of gain as I had at the start. So, and my delays are on. So maybe what I'll do is on this particular scene, my second scene, I'll turn the mix on the delays down. This is actually probably my favorite aspect of the way the Quad Cortex works, is the way the kind of scene snapshots, whatever you want to call them, works, where it's like, oh, I want less mix here for just kind of like a bit more of an ambient style delay. It will remember it on the scene that I'm on. So let's go down to like 25 or something like that. And do I have to change the sync on these? I don't. That's nice. So over here, I've got less mix on this scene. And then I could really go over the top on the third scene, and let's turn the mix up. Well, we'll just turn it up to 50, shall we? Very nice indeed. Obviously, maybe I'll do a fourth scene and I'll actually add another block. I'll add a rotary and I'll add it up here because that's one thing that I need in one or two ragdoll songs. So let's go modulation. Let's pop a rotary block in there. And on scene 1, I want this bypassed. On scene 2, I want this bypassed. On scene 3, I want this bypassed. And scene 4, I actually want it on. Okay, that is not quite what I was expecting. I'm actually going to put that before the amp, or before the capture, I should say, which isn't really authentic, but it might sound like it's kind of taken all the top end out. Well, it will sound less like it's taken the top end out of my tone. And I like that those scene changes are nice and smooth. So if you take a capture, and I guess this is the appeal of a device like this, this is really the killer app on this. It's the killer app on the Kemper as well, that if you have an amp that you love the sound of with a particular cabinet or a particular setup. You can take a bunch of captures. They probably sound close enough for rock and roll, like I said. I feel like there's such a tendency with these devices to just go to this like ridiculous level of granularity when you're comparing things, and you forget that the point is actually to play guitar and have some fun. So that's really, really nice. Obviously, I could have multiple captures in there, could capture drive pedals and stuff like that. But yeah, as you can see, this is totally adequate to go out and play live and do music stuff with, which I think should be the point of all these devices. And I'm gonna make a bunch of other captures with my other amps, and like I said, I'll share them up on the cloud or however that works. I actually haven't tried that yet, so I'm sure by the time this video goes up, I will have figured that out. All right. Let's go to some closing thoughts now. All right, I've got lots of things that I want to say about this unit, but I'll try and keep this under 2 minutes. Let's start with the good stuff. This is Neural DSP's first hardware unit, and I have to tip my hat to them because the overall form factor, the user interface and experience, the capture function, and the way effects are integrated with scenes, they have done so well on this. If you've never used a modeler before, this is a really nice way to get into the kind of modeling system. And if you have used a modeler before, I don't think you even need to read the manual. You can just dive into this. It's like using your smartphone, but you're getting guitar noises out of it. So does it make good guitar noises? Is it good in that regard? Definitely yes. Is it a game changer? No, because I don't think it's a very mature product at launch. There are lots of effect types missing in this. There's lots of amp models which aren't in this. I think as a modeler, it really under delivers, whereas as a kind of capture profiling device, it's pretty spot on. And you know, just comparing it to Neural DSP's plugins, I don't think the amp modeling in this is even as good as their plugins, as weird as that sounds. And I'm sure, you know, someone from Neural will probably get in the comments and tell me that they're exactly the same engine, but I just didn't get the same results out of the high gain models in this as I did out of the plugins. I had a really great experience using their plugins. I love their plugins, but I'm just not getting that from this unit at the moment for what I like. I'll try and qualify that as much as possible. There's also a lot of effect types missing, and there's some functions which probably don't work as well as they will work once this thing has had a couple of years of solid firmware development. It really feels like the capture function is the killer app in this regard, and it just kind of feels like the amp models at the moment are a bit underdeveloped. And that's only comparing it to other Neural products. Comparing it to something like my Axe Effects or any other modeler out there, it's definitely not a game changer in that regard. It's not like I plugged into this and went, oh wow, this is so good. It was just okay in that regard, and it's a really nice unit to use. I think if you get one of these, you're probably going to have a pretty good time, but if you're looking for the ultimate, then you really do have to go and try everything else. But that's just kind of the way things work, isn't it? So it makes good guitar noises. The capture definitely works well. And I'm gonna make a bunch of other videos with this unit. So rather than nitpick about it, tell me what you wanna see and hear from this unit, and I will try to do my best to get some videos out with it and capture some of my amps and share those with you all. Again, a massive thank you to my buddy Kevin for loaning me his quad Cortex, and to all of you for sitting through this entire video. If you want to support the channel, there are links to do that in the video description. I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe, be good to one another, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.